Greetings world. We are a non-decay. As we continue with the bloodlines, we have now covered the elite's history up until the 1500s. We will now continue with each individual family, as it is easy to see the separations from this point on. In this chapter we will discuss the Dupont family. In 1737 the Duponts come into the spotlight of the USA. Let's have a short biography of the Dupont family. Remember our KIA Bishop Pierre de Nemours. The lineage is one of the most easy to trace back. The family includes the blood of the Rockefeller, Roosevelt, Nuttall, and the Vanderbilt families. To bring Pierre up to date, we see his descendant Philip, Duke of Burgundy, creating the Knights of the Golden Fleece in 1396. Following the line and the name changes as they move through history, we come to Jehan Dupont in 1538, a painter who had a so-called dark and mysterious life, lived in Pontarlier, France. Notice this area bears the name, Pont. Following his descendants we come to 1737. Pierre Samuel Dupont, born in Nemours, France, came to Delaware, America and populated the area with his wife, an active astrologer and cultist Andy Motshanin. The Duponts own Delaware and countless corporations, including those controlling the water in much of the USA. The dynasty de Nuttall, House of Chatillon, de Nemours Dupont, Pont d'Arc and de Villebon are branches of the same family. You can easily find them way back when, if you break down the meanings of the last names used today. Dupont, du, or de, was often used meaning of, or from. Just like van or von. And Pont was a town in France like Nemours and others, named after the families who founded them. So, if you look at the names in this way, knowing the history of these people, they are easily spotted. A pont is a bridge, and interesting to note, there was a very popular and huge bridge in ancient Rome crossing to France called the Pont du Gard. Perhaps the grass was greener on the other side. Until they killed it all, of course. Often the translations of their names seem to tell a story of their own. They point back to their origin. Not being able to outwardly be what they are, they leave symbols and words as their confessions. By this name alone we can follow the Dupont family from America, back to France, back to Rome, and back to the tribes we have already exposed. All of the family's names are like this. The family tree of the elite is a web created by the same spider. Throughout history you can see the clear lineage. What is in a name? They use a multitude of different spellings, use the name of the town, or middle name of the father, etc. When the line gets too much attention, the name changes, and usually so does the location. From the beginning of their history, we have seen this game. Good deception tactic. In Ireland 1750, John Philpot Curran was born. He was founder of the Order of St. Patrick, also known as the Monks of the Screw, an elite club. Priory Curran named his estate after his position. It is now called St. Columba College. The Right Honourable Prior Curran is best known for his writings, which includes the famous quote, "Evil prospers when good men do nothing." This appears to be true, not only in his personal life but through history and especially today. Curran was known for dueling as well as being a captivating orator, after overcoming his stuttering, and had many famous friends, including Byron and Fitzgerald. Curran married his cousin Sarah and they had 8 children before she left him for another man who Curran later sued. His favorite daughter Gertrude was killed at age 12 after supposedly falling from her window. He disowned his other daughter Sarah for running off with a man he did not approve of. The man was later judged by him, jailed and decapitated. He always got his way in the end. In 1753 we see the story of Pierre Samuel Dupont d'Ema, son of Pierre and Anne. Parentless by the age of 16, he lived with his abusive uncle Pierre de Mochetti. The typical Disney plot, Dupont ran away and became a watchmaker. If you are in the inner circle of Illuminati and you get married, you receive a custom stand-up clock from the group which you must always keep in your family, set 5 minutes early, and kept in good order. Like the White Rabbit, you don't want to be late. For one with so-called poor beginnings. A mere descendant of kings with the inheritance to match. Dupont moved to France after being initiated into the Illuminati group and has many influential friends. In the 1770s, 2 of his best friends, Necker and Lafayette, loaned him large sums of money to try out his schemes in business and in forming a communist society in America. It's nice how the family passes its money around, gives their money to poor, simple folk who just want to carve a name for themselves. Pierre Dupont was a deist, like his mother, well practiced in the occult. He believed nature was a higher god than a mechanical deist god. Again, it's easy to see how religious people misinterpret the meanings by generally assuming everyone who mentions God means the Creator or Yeshua. Dupont believed in his ancestor Plato's idea of government, which included a philosopher king, which we have seen since Parnone ans Kager. Dupont became a journalist when he moved back to the USA and was an editor-manager of the printing media of the time. In 1776 we see Benjamin Franklin, close friend of Pierre Dupont, fellow Mason and member of the Collins Hellfire Club. Though his name should be a big enough clue of his lineage, he is a free man of the Franks, Franklin. He is descended from Father Uck Franklin Frockley, from 1495 Northamptonshire, England, United Kingdom. Benjamin Franklin and Thomas Jefferson, fellow members of the clubs, were known for practicing satanic sexual occult rituals with the groups. Both were deists, which is further found in their writing of the Declaration of Independence. They are Luciferians carrying out the plan of the Knights Templar to create the New World Order in the American continent, as we discussed earlier. In this time Baron von Stube, Knight of the Order of Fidelity, was fired for usury conduct. Having been a general in the Revolutionary Army and fought in the United States for independence. While Franklin and Silas Deane were visiting France as U.S. government agents, they heard about their friend's hardship and wrote to George Washington saying, "Lieutenant General in the King of Prussia's service, was obliged to leave due to zeal for our cause." Zeal being rape. Confirmed Mason George Washington, who was also close friends with Lafayette, a French Mason and general who fought with the colonists in the war, accepted him into American society at once. In 1783 Pierre Samuel Dupont, expecting to sit with Benjamin Franklin at the treaty table in Paris, was deceived by John Adams, who got the Americans to sign a treaty with Britain but without France's involvement. Alexander Hamilton was DuPont's lawyer in the US, and because of his absence, the United States is still a British colony as it was never signed off as an independent country. From 1789 to 1797 we have the first official president of the United States, George Washington, who was a confirmed Mason, member of the Knights of the Garter, and member of the Scottish Rite. The Order of the Garter is the secret inner group which is an elite group within the Order of St. John of Jerusalem, which is the British part of the Knights of Malta. The Knights of the Garter are the leaders of the Committee of 300. And it is known that George Washington performed the rite of the mystic tie in a cave complex near Winchester, Virginia during the French and Indian War. He had no vice presidents at this time. George Washington nominated 11 Supreme Court justices. 6 out of 11 were confirmed Masons. There isn't one senator, governor, congressman, mayor, vice president who is not fully aware of every elite-controlled leader amongst them. It is impossible to become one without being in the club. The United States is in no manner founded on Christian principle. Stated John Adams, Freemason, during the Treaty of Tripoli. No trill words were ever spoken and ignored. In this exciting time, much happened, so let's take a look. 1793 in November, the Duc d'Orléans, Grand Master of the Grand Orient of France, who was head of all the French Masons, along with 2 other key Masons and key Illuminati members, Talleyrand and Mirabeau, started the Jacobins. The name of the original lodge of the Jacobins was changed to Club Breton and then Jacobin Club. The Jacobins were basically an Illuminized type of Freemasonry. The president of the Jacobin Club was Freemason Georges Jacques Dartot. Dartot was a member of the famous and powerful Nine Sisters Lodge. 9 being 3 plus 3 plus 3, and sisters or muses as the Pleiades is called. It always leads to the occult. Always. Everything and every symbol and every number means something more. The people just never think or look deep enough. Comfortable in their sleep and complacency. Lafayette was a Jacobin, as well as a key player in the French Revolution, as he was the best friend of George Washington. Robespierre was both a Freemason and an Illuminatus, as well as a disciple of Weishaupt and Rousseau. Prussian Baron Anacharsis Cloots, a Freemason and Illuminatus, was also a disciple of Weishaupt. If one studies what these men taught, you will discover it is what was later called socialism and communism and had its roots firmly in Luciferianism. Weishaupt is a very well-known Luciferian. In November 1793, the true colors of the business can be seen in the campaign against religion, where many priests in France were killed. The Illuminati posted one of its mottos in public: "Death is an eternal sleep." In the occult mind, death is another name for Satan, who represents libertas. The Illuminati believe that Lucifer has a very precise plan which he entrusts only to his very select few at the top. The Catholic Church is based on this with its bishops and popes and rituals and chants. Much of what seems coincidence and unrelated is actually according to a very controlled and detailed, diabolical plan. Their clever plan can be seen all through history. As Aristotle stated, nature does nothing in vain. Hopefully by now you understand what the elite mean when they say things like nature, chance, natural, freedom, liberty, security, peace and the like. L. Luther Ellery Dupont was a major printer for the Jacobins, since they owned the printers. He was a deist and naturally worshipped nature. This is how media began to be twisted and controlled by the elite. They buy every new invention and inventor. They do this still today, setting up ventures, funding entrepreneurs, and being sure they buy up everything as soon as they can. Since the creation of the printing press, the elite have controlled it. In 1794 the Jay Treaty between the United States and Great Britain was signed. America agreed to pay £600,000 to King George III, as reparations for the American Revolution. The treaty was ratified by the Senate in a secret session who ordered that it not be published. Benjamin Franklin's grandson published it anyway and Congress passed the Alien and Sedition Acts in 1798 so federal judges could prosecute editors and publishers for reporting the truth about the government. Freedom of speech was lost then. Why did they agree to pay £600,000, 11 years after the war ended? Subversion. Great Britain is America's motherland. Complete with the French Mithra statue called Liberty holding the light high up over the citizens to better see their every move. By 1796 the government owed the bank $6,200,000 and by 1802 the government owned no stock in the bank. That is why the War of 1812 was created. The colony has been in debt ever since. In 1800 Henry D. St. Simon wrote The Globe and the Reorganization of the European Community which laid out ideas and plans for European unity. St. Simon suggested in the early 1800s that the date 2000 be the target date for the agenda to be in effect. In order to rearrange the world into the new order, a number of items and stages needed to occur. 2 canals, one through the Suez and one through Panama were needed they said to create interdependence between the nations. They also suggested a high dam on the Nile. 2 They suggested the technological transformation of the Earth, and the biological creation of a new, androgynous humanoid. Progress would be brought about by a series of revolutions. 3 Saint Simon, a horny little Illuminatus, wanted to have a child with Madame de Staël which would become the Antichrist. Don't worry, it didn't happen. The rest of it has though, which is enough. In 1801, Isaac Long, a Jesuit, brought a statue of Baphomet, Pan, a Lucifer, to Charleston, South Carolina, where he helped to establish the ancient and accepted Scottish Rite. 1802 we see President Jefferson Davis born. The Jesuit spy Jefferson Davis was made a president of the Confederate side of the states to plan and carry out the assassination of President Abraham Lincoln, to make room for the new candidate. The Civil War, just another terror drill, made its economic depression as planned so it was able to be more easily controlled as well as helping to bring down the population in America so it was at an acceptable size once again. They do nothing without making profit from it. nothing for your good. When they say the greater good, they mean theirs. During this time Victor Marie Dupont was an aide-de-camp to Illuminatus Lafayette from 1789 to 1792. He came from France to America in 1800 and soon got involved in Freemasonry. His Masonic career according to Masonic records is quite a busy one. In 1808 he signed a Masonic petition to create a lodge at Angelica, New York. In 1813 he joined Washington Lodge No. 1 of Delaware, then joined Knights Templars of Wilmington, Delaware. In 1819 he became Grand Marshal of the Grand Lodge of Delaware, which lasted on and off for several years, and in 1825 he was the Grand Treasurer of the Grand Lodge of Delaware. L. Luther Ire Dupont along with Nicholas Biddle and Anastor were chosen to be directors of the newly created United States Bank. By the end of the American Civil War, the Dupont family owned all of Delaware and was well known for being Episcopalian. If you are living in America, you can probably find much of your kitchen has Dupont products of some sort: water filters, faucets, hoses, and most chemicals that you use to clean are Dupont Company's products as well. Dupont has developed Vespel, neoprene, nylon, Coria, Teflo, Mylar, Captain, Kevlar, Zemdre, M5 Fiber, Omex, Tyvek, Sorua, Corfam, and Lycra. Dupont also developed Freon and many agricultural aids such as Monsanto provides as well. L. Luther Ire Dupont de Nemours and Company was founded in 1802. Some of those who took over various Dupont gunpowder manufacturing affairs were Alfred Dupont and Pierre Samuel Dupont II from 1870 until 1954, and Thomas Coleman Dupont from 1863 to 1930. When the family started in gunpowder in 1802, they dominated the industry, and by the end of the century they had the monopoly on it. Today it is an international industry with corporations in Singapore, Taiwan, Brazil, Australia, UK, Korea, Belgium, Luxembourg and more. The Army and Navy convinced the Dupont dynasty to implement a contract with the Koppel Company in Belgium for smokeless powder, which when the formula was received was found to be inferior to what the Americans were already producing. The ordeal concluded with the Duponts going with their own formula and setting up a new plant at Carneys Point, New Jersey. Alfred Dupont wasn't busy enough running the family's explosives business and also had a political campaign fighting against Coleman Dupont. Alfred won control of Delaware's politics and in 1911 bought the top paper, the Wilmington Morning News. He soon controlled 9 of Delaware's newspapers and the censorship grew and grew. He was involved in Egyptian occult and after traveling there, returned with a dog named Mummy, who he claimed was his reincarnated familiar spirit. He wrote many letters about his magical dog. Alfred died in 1935 and as the story goes his friend Ed Ball, who ended up marrying his wife and increasing DuPont's fortune to billions by the 60s, is said to have murdered him. So claimed the sister of Ed Ball. So much drama in these families. During the late 1800s to early 1900s we see William Dupont trapped in a miserable marriage with his cousin May. Louis Casey of Dupont committed suicide with a bullet in the library at the Wilmington Club. Alfred was shot in the face by accident on a hunting trip. Not to mention the insanity which plagues this family because of the incessant inbreeding. The Duponts have numerous cemeteries and institutions, mental facilities and hospitals. They are known for having buildings surrounded by tall thick concrete walls with broken glass embedded across the tops, so none may look in, such as at the Nemours estate. The DuPont facilities are leading in pediatrics and genetics studies. In 1937 a lead chemist for DuPont, Wallace Carothers, was found dead from poison after he made a monumental discovery in polymer research in the DuPont experimental station. A number of the DuPonts have graduated Yale, as well as Harvard, like Emile Francis DuPont and Robert L. DuPont, Jr., a research psychiatrist. Robert was the delegate for the USA at United Nations Commission on Narcotic Drugs from 1973 to 1978. He is especially knowledgeable what drugs will do to a person. Frances Marguerite DuPont we see is deep into genetics research. In 1977 we see Governor Pierre S. DuPont, IV, and his wife Elise, heir to the Vauer chain. One of the DuPont's residences can bed year-round and is kept as a museum, in original condition. Known for its gardens, Winterthur was the birthplace of Henry Francis DuPont in 1880. Henry went to Grotto School, an Ivy League Episcopalian boarding school in Massachusetts. The motto of the school is Qui servere est regere, which means to serve is to rule. This school was founded by the son of Samuel Peabody, partner of the London banking firm known as J.P. Morgan and Company, which consequently funded the school. After moving to the USA, son Edicote graduated from Jesuit-controlled Trinity College, Cambridge, married his cousin Faya and opened the boarding school. He is said to have implemented the Spartan educational system, cold showers and cubicles included. Naturally, being a high society Episcopalian family, we can see the circles of people the families always seem to be around. How the webs connect. Many elitists attended this school, as one would imagine, including Franklin Roosevelt. In 1999 3 students came out about sexual abuse in the dormitories, and as usual, it was silenced even as others came forward. Henry went on from this school to study horticulture at Harvard University. Yet another Jesuit elite infected school. He expanded Winterthur from a 30-room house to a 175-room house so he could expand on collecting furniture. He was asked by Jackie Kennedy to oversee the White House renovations from 1961 to 1963. The DuPonts today have their hands in the New Age religious movement sweeping the world today, as well as genetics and manufacturing products we have mentioned. The perfect example of how the elite profit whatever way the pendulum swings. When the families want war, they profit. When there comes a new industrial boom, they monopolize it, and if there is anything to be said about it, they will print what you need to know. Also, like most of the elite families, the DuPonts are involved in horse breeding and racing. However, one family member decided to turn whistleblower and expose the DuPonts and others in the international drug trafficking rings. Louis DuPont Smith wrote a book called Doping, which we highly recommend. The book details much of the elite's agendas and procedures. His family got a judge to rule that Louis was incompetent after the scandal, and the court declared that Louis could only have $15,000 of his fortune. The DuPonts also tried to stop his wedding. In 1992, a federal informant saved Louis from getting captured and taken 60 miles into the Atlantic on his father's yacht to be tortured and programmed. His family had hired a motorcycle gang with black hoods and some CIA mercenaries to kidnap Louis. Lewis found out and was able to escape, but as the elite families own the justice system, no charges were successful against them. In 2009 we see Robert H. Richards, son of Marianna DuPont Stillmer, charged and convicted of raping his 3-year-old daughter. He was sentenced 8 years in prison, but the sentence was suspended because, well, he is a DuPont and he is protected. Another proud member of the family was John Elliott DuPont, who murdered Olympic gold medal winning wrestler Dave Schultz in 1996. As a DuPont, with all the mental instability and excessive wealth that comes with it, John was a self-made wrestling coach. The Hollywood version of his life can be seen in the movie Foxcatcher. He died in prison in 2010. Emily Pemmy DuPont Frick can be seen in the tabloids and gossip columns, helping to keep the family public front going. After all, the papers they own and control must be filled with something. What could be more sympathy-raising than stories of how her dear old mother of the dynasty is living in squalor, somehow? The great-grandson and heir of Alfred Iry DuPont, Stephen Dent, was married in 1986 to Valerie Johnson. In 2009 he was extorted, blackmailed, 3 times by his prostitutes, whom he would pay tens of thousands of dollars for. Stephen Dent enjoys visiting seekingarrangement.com and setting up extravagant hotels and sex parties costing more than $200,000. He is reported to call those he pays for sex slaves and does vile and vulgar acts. Another jewel of the family is Lamont DuPont Copeland. The Copeland family is very large in religious movements in America. Together with Hugh Moore and William Henry Draper Jr., Lamont founded the Population Crisis Committee, now known as the Population Action International, as a lobbying organization for government involvement in population control. You can see from its website it is just another United Nations Agenda 2030 pusher. Making profit off of your donations so they can spread more patented diseases and murder worldwide. Lamont also established the Adelit Fellowship at the University of Delaware, which is listed as one of Harvard's financial aid funds. He died in 1983, but not before having 3 children. His children are Bouchain Vineyards winery owner Gerrit Van Swearing in Copeland. Lamont DuPont Copeland Jr., nicknamed Martsy, who is Chief Executive Officer of Associates Graphic Services, which he founded and focuses on printing. He is also a trustee of Christie Care Health Services, Brooks School, the Mount Cuba Center for Piedmont Flora, Red Clay Reservation, and the University of Delaware Library Associates. His sister is Louisa DuPont Copeland, who is called Mrs. Robert W. Duemling in papers frequently, a convenient way to hide identity in plain sight. She married James Biddle of the Philadelphia Biddles, who are said to be the first family of Philadelphia. Their children are Letitia Copeland Biddle, Pamela Copeland Biddle, and James Copeland Biddle. Letitia was married to Seth Matthew Blitzer by Rabbi Emily Korzik. Letitia graduated from Miss Porter's School and the University of Vermont, an Ivy League school. Ivy League simply means entirely created and controlled by the Jesuit elite. Pamela was married to Joel E. Fishmar by Rabbi Bruce Goldman, as well as Episcopalian Reverend Gregory Straub. She graduated from Foxcroft School and the University of Virginia and New York University. Finally, James Copeland Biddle was married to Kristen Ann Cater by an Episcopalian. He was president of BDC Entertainment. These families are not the top of the chain, but they are the ones directly orchestrating your futures through their generations under the orders of the upper elite families. If humanity does not start to think as they do and see the generational links and progressions, then it will never survive. This concludes our chapter on the Duponts. Join us next time for another family adventure. Expect it.